going to happen to you. So everybody be here. This is non-sequitur. Give me 1 second. Okay, so this is technically Latin, but it's one of those words that we have adopted into our language. And so that's why it's kind of a weird spelling and it looks a little crazy. So everybody say that. Non-sequitur. Say it. Non-sequitur. Say sequitur one time. Sequitur. Yeah, it's pretty crazy spelling. So I'm going to show you an example from The Office because I love The Office. I recorded this and I'm sorry because I tried to find it on YouTube and it does not exist on YouTube. So I just recorded it myself last time I was watching this episode. And my cat makes a cameo at one point. But this is a great example of what I'm about to teach you, okay? This is a non sequitur.
I give them money. I give them food. Not directly, but through the money. I heal them. Today, I am in charge of picking a great new healthcare plan. Right? That's what this is all about. Does that make me their doctor?
Right here.
Yes. In a way. Yeah, like a specialist.
So now let's look at the definition so that you can see why that's a non sequitur. So a non sequitur is when you have something that follows something else, but logically they do not fit together. Make sure this is the only thing on your screen, guys. So he just was saying, I give them money because he's the boss. And the money buys them healthcare. So does that make me their doctor? Yeah. Yeah, it does. No, it doesn't. That's a non sequitur. Those things totally do not match together. That just because you happen to be the boss and that's where they're getting their paycheck from and they buy healthcare with it does not mean you're their doctor. So this is a weird one. This was a poster from World War II. It was a little bit of propaganda. They were trying, there was a major fuel shortage. And so they were trying to get people to carpool, so they had more fuel to go around, but it's a non sequitur because they don't really logically fit together. When you ride alone, you ride with Hitler? What? How does that even make sense? Like, I understand what they were going for. They're basically saying you're not helping the war effort if you're not carpooling, right? But it's a non sequitur because logically those things don't fit together. And that's what, in Latin, non sequitur literally translates from Latin to English to does not follow. Those things do not fit together. So one of the reasons why non sequiturs, it's a real life word. It's not just creative writing. You'll have non sequiturs all day, every day in life. Like, I'm going to pick on poor Ruby Walker. How many of you know Ruby? I love Ruby dearly. She is wonderful. Ruby had a great non sequitur yesterday in first period debate. We were doing a debate thing, and for Ruby had made a bad choice and had shoved her hand so far into the hole on these chairs that I got stuck. And so I had to go from debate to let me try and save this poor student's hand. They ended up having to cut her loose. Now there's a replacement chair. Those things, you would not think they go together, right? That's a non sequitur. When you have to go from one, all of a sudden to something else. It's, my brother used to make this joke all the time because he has pretty bad ADHD. And he would kind of, like, just own it and would be like, you know what? I'm just going to embrace my distraction. And he would often, in the middle of a conversation, just go, squirrel! And that is also a non sequitur, right? When you have something that doesn't follow the thing that came right up in front or right before it, yeah.
Like, everyone in my family, except for, like, me, my sister, and my mom have ADHD. And so, me and my sister make this joke about everyone else. We're like, how do I do this math question? Oh, look, an egg-shaped object. How do eggs become eggs?
Non sequitur, right? Things that don't logically fit together. Do you have another example?
So I have a question of this, if this is
Sure.
So me and my sister, we're very close, but she is like this tall compared to me,
Okay.
and a twig. I could wrap my hands around her entire waist.
Okay.
So whenever she's talking about something I don't like, I'll just body slam her. Whale.
That's definitely a non sequitur. I have a non sequitur that I'm famous for in my family. It's embarrassing, but I'll just tell you anyways. So my family, this happened 7 years ago, and they still do not let me live this down, okay? It's in the examples. So we were all together for Christmas, and I have 12 nieces and nephews, and they're little and adorable. And my family, like all my sisters and brothers, were trying to kind of set up a nativity using all the little kids, all the nieces and nephews. And they were like making little angel costumes and stuff like that. And my older sister, Elisa, she was like, does anybody have pipe cleaners? Do you guys know what I'm talking about? They're kind of fuzzy, yeah. And that was her question. Does anyone have pipe cleaners? My response, 1 second later, was I have cats. That is a non sequitur. Does anyone have pipe cleaners? I have cats. In my mind, it totally made sense. Because my cats lose their minds over pipe cleaners. Any garbage cats just think it's a toy, right? Or you buy them official toys and they're like, whatever, I'm just playing with garbage. But they do actually like pipe cleaners. And that's what my grade was. But for everybody else, they basically spent an hour laughing at me. Of just constantly like, does anyone have pipe cleaners? I have cats! And still to this day, like, I get random texts, non sequitur-y kinds of texts of just, I have cats. So that's, I feel like though in middle school, we're surrounded by non sequiturs all the time. My one famous one, this was my first year at Albion, 13 years ago. I was in the middle of teaching, this was back when I taught ELA. In the middle of a lesson about adjectives, 7th grader's hand goes up. Mrs. Coates, you have hand sanitizer I forgot to put on deodorant. And I was like, buddy, what does that have to do with adjectives? So that kind of, it does not logically fit together. That's a non sequitur. So let me bring this full circle. The reason why I teach non sequitur during the multi-genre project is the multi-genre project is a little bit more segmented. Oh, I should, hold on, let me pause. That kid, later in the day, other kids reported back to me. He found hand sanitizer in another class and was rubbing it on his pits in the middle of his later on period in the day, and that was hilarious and weird. Okay, back to coming full circle. So the multi-genre project can feel a little bit segmented, and so do kind of be careful. It's okay if there's not really smooth transitions, but do be careful of non sequiturs in your multi-genre project. If you have something that logically isn't fitting, be careful of that, because remember, you are still just telling a story, and it should technically fit together, and be aware of things that don't fit with everything else. So the other things that because again, non sequitur is not just creative writing, but I have seen stories where there's non sequiturs in the choices that that characters are making. Sometimes it drives me nuts when you have a character who all of a sudden turns evil for no good reason at all. And for me, I think that feels like a non sequitur. That there should be a reason, and I think, in my opinion, it doesn't make sense when you have a character who's all of a sudden you're like, oh, you know what, I'm just going to start, like, committing crimes. All the crimes, right? Because there should be a catalyst for that. Otherwise, it feels like it doesn't logically fit together, and it is a non sequitur. So they can be funny, so you can use them on purpose, just like that office clip I showed you. And we'll end with this. But Jake, what did you want to say?
Yeah, so I had a bad day. Like, I stepped in a pothole and it sucked, so I burned down an entire house, almost killing a family of 4.
That was the perfect example of what I just said, right? How would that, logically, those steps do not fit together. Yeah. Tegan. Non sequitur, Jasper.
Another one is actually I think it was but in our old D&D group,
Mm-hmm.
we at the first campaign we ever did.
Uh-huh.
Was it you or Chloe? They put a bunch of Skittles into the root beer and made Skittle water. So now at random times, someone will just throw a pack of Skittles at the DM.
Just randomly.
Skittle water.
Right, which logically
We're not
isn't
allowed
fitting.
beer anymore.
Isn't fitting with things, so it's a non sequitur. Yeah, exactly. Okay, in case you're having a hard time coming up with your own example, let's.
Even though
Oh,
both premise 1
sorry.
and premise 2 are correct.
Okay.
The transmission in my car is acting up again. Therefore, you have to read the book by Friday.
What?
That doesn't make any sense. How do we get from the premise of my transmission acting up to the conclusion that you have to read the book by Friday?
So, sorry to bring up debate and creative writing, but all of my debaters, you'll see non sequiturs happen a lot in debate as well. That you'll see kids who try and make arguments and try and force things together that really don't actually fit together. They're a non sequitur.
These two sentences are an example of a non sequitur. The Latin word non sequitur literally means it does not follow. There is a divide between the premise and the conclusion, which results in something called a fallacy. Simply put, the conclusion does not follow the premise. A non sequitur is all about taking a giant logical jump that is totally unreasonable. Okay, let's say that I wanted to prove that all dogs are good herders. In formal logic, we start with at least two premises. This is followed by a conclusion that is based on those premises. Premise 1, my corgi is an excellent herder.
This is in honor of Miss Timothy.
My corgi is a dog.
She loves
Conclusion,
corgis.
therefore, all dogs are excellent herders.
So, not all non sequiturs are so ridiculous and so funny, but yeah, that's an example of things that, how did we get to the conclusion, right? Those things might not actually be true. They might not actually fit together. So I'm going to dare you, actually, I'm going to triple dog dare you, that next time there's a non sequitur that happens in one of your classes, which, let's be honest, will probably happen in the next 5 minutes, and then all day long, I am going to encourage you and all of my 5th period to then be like, non sequitur, because then it'll be stuck in your brain forever, and it'll help you remember. Okay, so we are done with non sequitur.